we have ourselves now like I said at the open, we have a preview of a race at the same track for the first time this year in Atlanta. So we have data on that, which always helps from this year. Let's also keep in mind that when you're talking about Atlanta, you really need to limit yourself to last year and this year. So we got really just 3 races to look at.
Yep.
Sure, you can say, hey, like Alex Bowman's never led a lap at Atlanta. That's a nice thing to say. Throw it in there. I could throw it in there, but again, it's meaningless after 2021. So that's just the way it is, and it makes life a little bit easier for us as well as we're getting ready for the race. So let's talk about, well, I'll tell you what, first of all, how many picks do you think we equally
this week? Gosh, probably had more this. Well, we had what, 4 or 5 last week.
We had about 5 last week.
I'm gonna say 3. I'll go in the middle between what we've had and what we had.
Right on the nose. 3.
All right.
Who are they?
Ooh. Let me think here. Trying to remember what the odds were. I'm gonna say Logano.
No, I'm the only one that didn't take him.
Blaney.
Yes.
Keselowski.
Yes.
Trying to think before. So the last one would be. Let me go longer. Suarez.
No.
Bell.
No.
Go back to Harvick.
No long shots.
No long shots. So it was more up front. Byron.
Nope. You didn't take Byron.
That's it. Did I even take Byron? No. I'm looking at I've got my. I don't know how you can see it because it's blurred on my note. I'm going down the manufacturer cam. So, did I say Hamlin yet?
No, but that's not it. No Hamlin. Nobody took Hamlin this week.
No, I was going to say, did anybody take him?
Nope. Elliott.
Was it Elliott? Okay, I was skipping by him.
That's a tough one because we haven't really taken him much, and now we've all taken him. So yeah, that would have been a hard one.
I wasn't going to guess because he was so far up there on the numbers. Like, was he the one that we? So okay, that makes sense then.
I tell you what, this is a good time too to just let everybody know a couple quick things. We're now on Discord officially, so we have a description and a link that you can connect with. And what this is going to be really good about now is anything that happens between the show and the race. So now something happens and maybe we want to vent. Maybe if this was last week, we could have said stuff about, hey, maybe they should have started the race earlier. This is just, Eric, CJ Radoon, and we can kind of chat and get something going. But if you guys are a part of it as well, if you have any questions or comments between our show and the race, something that you want to get going there, obviously you can keep doing that on YouTube, and there's no problem at all there. I mean, we're not telling you to leave YouTube, but Discord is just, I'm just saying that's an area really where the 3 of us are going to kind of talk things up like we normally do on text. Instead of doing that, we're going to now do it on Discord, and that's going to hopefully give you guys an opportunity to join in as well. So check that out. And then also a reminder, that as of right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're still a go for Atlanta live 1 hour before the race ends.
Yeah.
Okay. So at time, what are we looking at time-wise?
That I don't know.
What time does the race start?
It's going to be key. I got it 7:20 green flag.
Excuse me?
7:20 is green flag.
Oh, this is a night race.
Yeah,
I totally forgot about that. Okay, cool.
That's where it's going to be. That's where I'll be a game time with the kids.
Okay,
I got that. So that's where.
What time do the kids normally go to bed?
It ranges.
Okay.
Summer month because it stays light here till darn near 10 o'clock.
So I tell you what we're going to do is in that respect.
Discord.
And this is why Discord is awesome now. is we are going to update you guys on Discord as soon as we have a definitive time. And because we're not going to probably have one until like 30 minutes before or an hour before, that kind of thing, we're not going to post a live promo right away. We probably do it like, 10 minutes before, even 15 minutes before. Like, all right, the kids are definitely in bed now. So, and it's a half hour before it probably will start. You can go ahead and post the promo. So that kind of thing. And look, if
they've got comments during it too, the race, we'll just say something, just use it. I mean, even if you want our thoughts during it, just that's an easy spot to do it.
Absolutely. And that's what we'll be doing every week during the races. If we want to comment during the races, starting on Sunday, that's definitely the place to do it during the race. Okay. So now let's get back. Then you've got now again, since this is one of these races, what would we call? What is the correct terminology we're using right now for these races for Atlanta, Daytona, and Talladega?
Super Speedway.
Oh, so that's what we're just going. Okay.
Designation. Okay. Yep. Because it's called the Super Speedway package. Some people, if you want to use drafting package, you could use it too. But these would be the only 3 tracks that are kind of correlate with each other. Atlanta being different is it's a mile shorter than Daytona. So at least Daytona and Talladega is bigger. You have some room to move around. These laps click by because it's a mile shorter per lap. So it's kind of harder to move through the field at a place like this because you don't have as much real estate.
Yep.
You got a whole mile less is a big deal. So it's also why you don't get a lot of separation either. Why it is a big pack like a Daytona or Talladega, because you just don't. It's hard to spread out when you only have 1.54 miles to work with.
Yeah. So you better your track position very important compared to Talladega.
It is, and plus, the reason why I'm so curious about this week is in the spring race was cooler.
Okay.
But it was still under the sun. So even if it's in the 50s or 60s, the sun is still baking that track. So it could cause it to get slicker. This race would have probably been better as a daytime race where the track's hot and slick and it won't have that big pack. You might have some guys lose it and create at least a little bit of separation to make some passing. But as we talked about before the Nashville show, NASCAR is experimenting with Sunday nights. It worked in Nashville. It was a big rating. Because Saturday nights just don't seem to give them much ratings, and they want to at least have Sundays in prime time. And don't know if anybody's been to Atlanta in early July on a Sunday afternoon. You don't want to also bake in the grandstands either. So they thought, let's try a night race with this and see if it works out. So, but with a night race, it's still going to be hot, but it also is going to be probably under the lights at some point. Under the lights are going to create more grip, which I think is going to keep these cars even more tightly knit together. So it will be tough to pass. You're not going to see that third lane, the drafting lane, like you see in Daytona.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately.
Yeah. So that's why I look at trends when I look at really who was good at both. And Ford shined in the spring race. And they drove a lot of laps on the season on super speedways in general. So I kind of narrowed it down. We get to my picks. You'll see a common theme. Mostly Ford drivers, a few Chevrolet ones sprinkled, and one Toyota, because Toyota has struggled on these type of tracks.
Yeah, I have to pick I got to get back on a new winning streak. So I got screwed out of winning. I got one of those first time ever deals because Justin Haley was one of my long shot picks.
Yep,
and I could have been there. I could have had my win streak continue with Justin Haley winning, and I got totally bumped by a first time ever. So I'm disappointed in that, and I think when that happens, I think maybe I'm afraid of what might happen next. After your winning streak is over, sometimes you start feeling, oh no.
You Ryan Blaney, you're in the midst of the Ryan
Blaney.
Right
yes, exactly.
He won, and then it's all been downhill.
Yep. Speaking of Blaney, so out of the top 3, you got Kyle Elliott. Well, the top 4: Kyle, Elliott, Blaney, Logano, and I would probably have put Byron in there myself. Yeah. You didn't take Byron, though. Interesting. Out of those top picks, Now, I didn't take Logano. Of course, CJ does as usual, so he took them all, but except Hamlin, I think. But you did not take Kyle or Byron, and I did not take Logano out of the top 6. So what was your reasoning on not going? Because I was surprised by you didn't go with Kyle or Byron.
Because Byron, his win in the spring race last year was, he led 111 laps. But if you look, 30th in this race last year, 32nd in the spring. He was 34th in Daytona. He was 7th in Talladega, but these typically aren't great tracks for him. That's why last year's one was a little bit of a fluke. And then you also look at his qualifying in Atlanta. Granted, it doesn't matter prior to the reconfiguration, but we'll just go over all of them because he's got a brief history here. 23rd, 17th, 20th, 9th, 19th, 12th, 13th, and 11th. He doesn't typically have great track position at the start there either. So with Ford's dominating the lap sled and Chevrolet, they've won super speedway. They're kind of taking the wins where Ford's dominating the lap sled. There's other Chevy drivers I felt to be had over somebody that's finished 30th and 32nd his last two there. That's the only reason why. And for Kyle, 19th in Daytona. Granted, he should have won. He won the Daytona 500. He didn't win the Daytona 515. He was 10th here in the spring race. And you got to remember, the Talladega win, he only led 3 laps.
Yeah, he should have won Daytona and not really Talladega. That's kind of the switch off. So
yep. And this car, Childress hasn't been great. Granted, they won Daytona with Austin Dillon last year, and they just won Talladega. But at Atlanta, you just look at Austin Dillon in this configuration, 35th, 20th. Sure. Tyler Reddick, when he was with them, it was 28th, 29th. So you combine all that, I thought, he's hot with momentum, with finishes, but is he going to win for those odds? I just thought there was better people to place your money at.
Yeah, I was surprised he was the favorite. I really didn't think he'd be the favorite. But again, I mean, at this point, the reason I'm going in with Kyle as my top pick this week is just because he is trending well on the super speedways this year. So I'll give him a shot. I'll give him one shot. I know the 10th in March at Atlanta should say more than winning and almost winning. I get that, but I'll give him a shot here because he's got 6 straight top 10s on the year, a win, a runner-up in that stretch, 5th last week. So the combination of he's in a really good frame of mind right now too. And I don't usually make Kyle my top pick, so I'll do it this week. All right, so we all went with Elliott, Blaney. So let's talk about those two. Elliott, the defending champ. Now, I put a little bit of money on him, but like you, it was almost like, all right, let's just not lose money here if Elliott wins, because I'm still, even though he's getting closer to winning, the trend line is nice. It's still, he's not leading laps. He's not doing anything where it's like, oh boy, Chase Elliott's back. So we haven't seen that yet, but he did win the race last year, not racing, of course, in March. And so I think it's almost like you have to take him.
You did, because I was looking for ways not to. I mean, you look at Daytona, he was 38th, and he was 12th in Talladega. But he did win 2 super speedway races last year. This is his home race. Like you said, he wasn't there in the spring. You know he wants to win there. He's got all these top 5s going on the season now that he's kind of back in the roll of things again. So I was kind of looking for ways, like, is he really going to win this thing, though? And I took him kind of low, just let's get some money back, but that's about it, because I don't feel highly that he's going to jump out and take the risk that it's going to take. Because here's the thing. We've seen at the end of these races, you have to take risks to get to that lead, to get to that win. He's made up all this ground in the points. Do you really want to take a risk going from 3rd to try to win when you could just, another 3rd place finish and some good stage points? He's kind of changing my mind when I said, I don't think he can points his way in. He's going to have to win.
Well, that's because he's got 3 straight top 5s. That's what we talked about. That's what it's going to take.
Another So another one, do you want to risk? Let's say, because you don't see a lot of attrition in these races till the end. If you're running in the top 5 with a few laps to go, do you make that move to go for the win and risk wrecking and going from a top 5 to 27th? And you just took all that momentum, all that ground you made up, you just thrown it to the side. So that's where I was a little bit hesitant that what do they do? Granted, hey, I'm a racer. I want to go for the win. It's easier said than done, but then you're in that moment. And let's say the Fords are dominating like they have, and you realize, hey, I'm third, but I don't really have a car capable of winning this thing. Do I really try to go win this thing, or do I just ride here and help let them make a mistake, and maybe I'll win based off that? Because at least right now, I feel like for him, a top 5 has got to feel like another win.
Sure. Yeah.
Just all these top 5s, it's going to get him there. Hell, he's almost caught Alex Bowman for crying out loud. He's really coming on strong.
Yeah.
So it was tough, but again, you have to take him. You have to take him for getting you're getting double-digit odds.
Sure.
You've got to take him, but
this is a good
I don't
week.
feel great about it.
And then Blaney, look, the only thing that is concerning about Blaney is the stretch he's in. This is why I say it. I keep saying it. It's just the truth. Blaney is a streaky driver. He gets into these, once he gets into that first rut, and again, the first 2 were not his fault. He didn't do anything wrong. Last week, he just didn't have the car. Okay, fine. And again, everybody, there were other cars that were getting into wrecks. But fact is that once he gets, even if it's not his fault, once he gets into that bad result, it just escalates and compounds itself one after another. So when does that end? And does it end right away? Usually it doesn't, but you have to take Blaney. You always do on a super speedway, and you're still getting a 12-1 number, coming off second at Talladega, led the most laps there with 47, and he's been fine here. I don't think he's going to win. He's not my top pick, but again, I think because of his odds, you have to not only just put money on him, but you have to, even what you did, you put a little bit more on Blaney than you did on Elliott, and that's kind of the way I went as well.
Yeah, I feel really good about him this week. If you look at the 3 drafting tracks as a whole this season, he's one of 2 drivers that have a top 10 in all 3 races. 8th in the Daytona 500, 7th here, 2nd in Talladega. And you look at Atlanta, even before the repave and the reconfiguration, this was a really good track for him. He won in 2021 here. But then you look at even since the reconfiguration, he did finish 17th not this past spring, the spring before, but he led 15 laps. Last year in this race, he was 5th. And the spring race this year, he was 7th. And you look at where he qualifies, 2nd, 6th, 3rd. So he's going to be up front. It's always been factors that have taken him out, which has always scared him, pit road or bad luck like he's been in. But he's also has won recently again. So he has tasted victory. And I just have a feeling this race, even though it is a night race, is going to look a lot like the spring. He's going to have teammates with him up front. And if he's the lead of those teammates, he'll be aggressive now that he's got the one out of the way to get another one, that I feel like he has that aggression to win. So I do feel really high about him that he can get this job done on Sunday night. With
Logano, again, both you guys took him. But I just stood away. Sweeping and look, he dominated. That's the thing though, and he wasn't just a win. He dominated, leading 140 of 260 laps. Plus he was 2nd in the Daytona 500. So we know he's one of the better drivers on super speedways. And again, Ford and all that. That was it for me. You guys basically bet him to get your money back. And that probably would have been the way I would have done it as well. But yeah, I kind of, I just think it's hard to sweep.
It is. That's why I didn't bet more on him, because the numbers should. Runner-up Daytona 500, win here, he should be good, and he should. But it's still hard to sweep a track these days, and so that's the only reason I went a little bit lower with him, because I just think it's gonna be hard to sweep. I wouldn't be shocked if he did.
No,
but you also got to look at before he won Atlanta. He hadn't had a top 5 there since March 1st, 2015. So, yes, he led 140 laps. He dominated, but he also, again, didn't have a top 5 since 2015. And
that include last year. He didn't really do anything.
Yeah, 9th and 26th.
With the new
setup. But he qualifies. Yeah, good there. So, and Ford's is the superior package on super speedways. And I guess I'll go ahead and say the stats since we're a lot of Fords up top when I took them. They led 221 and 260 laps. Took home 2 of the top 3 spots, or the top 2 spots, 3 of the top 7. That equaled the amount of laps led just in Atlanta alone than they did the first 4 weeks combined of that season. And then you look at all the drafting tracks, 122 of 212 laps in Daytona, 221 of 260 here, and 88 of 196 of Talladega. That's 431 other laps led this season on these tracks. That's 64.5% of all laps led over across the entire season on every track are on super speedways for them. So
they got to take advantage of it.
That's why you got to go forward heavy. They know they're in a deficit elsewhere. They're trying to claw out of it. But if you're going to be good anywhere, you should maximize at it. And this is one of those weeks. Because you look at last week, they didn't even lead a lap at Chicago. Not one single lap. They didn't lead. And then you look at Nashville, they led 2 laps. You look at Sonoma, they led 1 lap. Gateway and Charlotte, different types of tracks. Darlington led 9 laps. Kansas led 9 laps. Dover led 8 laps. That's since May, guys. That's all they've done. So if these are their types of tracks that they can thrive on, and that's why I went forward heavy, because I think at some point they're going to come out of this, and why not a track like this? So they're going to the term throw your eggs in one basket, that's kind of what you have to do this weekend. So that's why I went forward heavy.
Not a bad strategy.
Do I think Logano can sweep? No, but knowing that they're probably going all in this race, you got to go with them.
Yeah, if you're going to go all in on Ford, and obviously you're taking Logano as part of that, and there's nothing wrong with having Logano in that kind of strategy. So it makes a lot of sense to me. And if the viewers want to use that strategy, it's probably a smart one. 14-1, you have 3 drivers, and I took Byron and Keselowski, as did CJ. You just went with Keselowski, as we mentioned, no Byron. As far as Hamlin, 6th earlier this year, didn't do much last year. And so really, he hasn't really done much so far in the new setup at Atlanta. And he hasn't done much this year. We know how good he is, though, on super speedways, but he's in he's in a little bit of a rut so far, a mini rut. And so, again, like Logano, wouldn't surprise us at all if Denny Hamlin dominated in wins at a super speedway. And you are getting 14-1. But there's other drivers out there that might just be a little bit better. And Keselowski is one of them, because this is the only thing I don't like are the odds. But, hey, you know what? I mean, they're earned. He was second in the race this year, leading 47 laps. And he led the most laps in the Daytona 500. I'm not sure anybody realizes that, even though he didn't finish well. But that's okay. You know, that's what happens. It's the 500. 5th at Talladega. So he's in a nice run this year on the super speedways. Very nice run. And it's not just Talladega. Usually it's just Talladega. Well, it's not the case. He's really good. And now he's in a bit of a slow, kind of, we mentioned this the last few weeks. He hasn't had a top 10 in his last 5, but I think that could be erased. And if anybody's in a slump over the last 3 or 4 races, I don't hold it past him at all, because as we said before these upcoming races a month ago, they're all weird races. They're all at these weird tracks that they don't go to, and road courses. And so if you get into a bad run and you're coming off that, don't worry about it. We're now going back to kind of normal for NASCAR, and that's why Keselowski, even at 14-1, is a good play.
Yeah, he's a really good. And you remember Daytona, he and Chris Buescher were 1-2 coming across the 5 to go, and then Kyle and Austin Dillon got back by him, and they had a top 5 going, not for all those wrecks at the end. So Daytona was a top 5, should have been in my book. He had a top 5 car. Talladega was a top 5, and here was a runner-up. And he's good at these tracks. He could use a win. Granted, he's in right now as far as a wild card, but a win would go a long way. So I felt really good about him there. He's usually good at Atlanta, and the Ford factor. The slump also is more tied to the manufacturer than him himself. So I like him for those odds. And Hamlin, when you look at Toyotas, I know I've got it around here somewhere. So they haven't won in Atlanta a Toyota car since 2014. They're 2 for their last 18 at Talladega and 1 for their last 8 at Daytona. So they're not winning. They're not leading laps. They only led 20 laps in the spring, 65 at Talladega total. Ford is by far the best manufacturer. Chevrolet is right there probably even because they're winning the races on super speedways, and Toyota's a distant third. So with that being said, and Hamlin's lack of success, I mean, he was 17th in the Daytona 500 and at Talladega. Just didn't feel good about him when his teammate, who we'll go over here in a second, longer odds, better finishes at these tracks. So I went that direction as my. I had to do one Toyota in there, and that was the one I went with.
Yeah, keep in mind too that the last two winners, especially we've only had 3 in this new setup, 2 of them on the pole. So, which is a little bit unusual. I think we talked about that either at Talladega or Daytona this year, didn't we? About how wasn't there like a long streak or something like that of pole sitters?
Top 12s.
Was that Talladega or I forget?
I think it was Talladega hasn't seen a pole sitter win in forever.
There
it
you
seems
go.
Like.
Okay.
Yep.
So that shows you the difference in what we talked about. Why positioning much different at Atlanta. Okay, so then at 16-1, see, I avoided both of these drivers. You went with Bell, and of course so did CJ. And I understand because this is all of a sudden a new deal for Christopher Bell because he's never really been good at super speedways. But all of a sudden, 3rd at Atlanta, 3rd in the 500, and 8th at Talladega. So something's working. And he's found a nice little groove on the super speedways finally. I just again, putting my money elsewhere because I'm finding it hard to believe that all of a sudden he's going to win this year after not doing much at all in his career, short career though. Plus, he hasn't had a top 5 since his dirt win. And I think even what happened last week, he was one of my top plays last week, and maybe he should have won again if things would have been kind of normal. But when you're going through a bad losing streak, that's what happens. You get bad luck. And that's also kind of an issue that I'm having. But I do understand why you're taking him based on what he's looked like so far this year on super speedways.
Yeah, he's just been too good. Of all people in super speedways, he's not one you think of.
No.
His finish has just been so good.
No.
And you look at even last year, he was 23rd is what the spring race results shows, but he crossed the finish line 2nd. He was just penalized for kind of going below the white line, but he was forced. And he's like I was forced down here. And they still put him at the end of the lead lap. So technically,
that's true.
2 of his 3 finishes at Atlanta are in the top 3. So I don't, with the Ford trend or the Toyota trend with Ford's lead lap, Chevy winning, if a Toyota driver is going to win, it was too much to overlook the guy that's been kind of next best, kind of their leader as far as right now. So I went with one Toyota, and that was him for those reasons.
Oh, and Chastain, runner-up in both races last year, leading a combined 74 laps. 13th this year, didn't do much. Basically, last year was nice, but this year, as we talked about with Chastain and Suarez, there's a lot of what they did good last year that they're not repeating this year. And this is one of them. They're just, the super speedways just haven't been all that great for them.
No, 9th in Daytona, 13th here, 23rd Talladega. The one that kind of struggled with him, I know I end up with Suarez, which we'll go over later. But Trackhouse, they're going for a hat trick here. They're looking for 3 straight wins. They won with Chastain in Nashville. They just won last week.
All right.
So 3 wins, 3 different drivers with Suarez.
Okay.
We'll get with him
in a
little bit. But it's also hard to think if they're going to win 3 races in 3 weeks when they only won 2 races in the previous.
Well, that's true too.
52 races. It's just hard to think that they're going to end up flipping it around that quick. Are you really going to win 3 straight when you haven't? That'll equal the amount of wins you've had before. It could happen, but it's just hard with his results this week, especially Chastain, to think, he's going to jump out and do it on Sunday. He could, but we'll see.
Larson, once again, we stay away from Larson. The only good thing is his odds are a lot better now on a super speedway at 18-1, and he is in a good groove, 4 straight top 10s. But again, he hasn't proven that he can not only, win one of these things, but look like he's going to win. So, maybe if those odds get a little bit better than that, then I'll start because there's just so many other good drivers on super speedways to take.
And I say this every super speedway, and I'll keep saying it. This will be his 38th start on a super speedway. He has 1 top 5.
Yeah, forget about wins. Yeah.
just get in the top 5. There's nobody that's sitting here today. There'll probably be a commenter that'll come in. I told you guys.
Yeah, right.
Over what data? 37 starts, he's got one top 5. There'd be absolutely zero reason to take him this week. If he wins, it's a fluke, but he's eventually think he's going to win sometime, but it's just hard to ever take him when 37 starts.
There could be a lot of wrecks. There could be 12 drivers left, and most of the good super speedway drivers are gone. That could happen. That's when he would probably win. But again, at least the only good thing is you are getting 18-1. So
you were getting 8-9-1 with him. I'm like, why? Why is he these odds? Now he's finally coming down, but I still won't touch him for those odds.
Buescher and Cindric are 20-1. So I took Buescher. Once again, you guys for the next second straight week have gone with Cindric, and I haven't. But I understand again the Ford, so I get it. But and Cindric did finish 6th last week, so maybe that is the beginning of maybe some karma getting back, because he's had a really bad year so far, and I know that as he's been on my fantasy team. Buescher, meanwhile, he has a couple of crashes here lately, but did finish 7th when he didn't crash last year. 4th at the 500, 3rd at Talladega, 6 top 10s in his last 9. So, I felt there was no reason at this point, and I've been taking him a lot lately as a long shot, and this is another race to take him. And you took both Buescher and Cindric.
Yeah, Ford combo again. I feel good about them. Buescher, as you said, yes, he was 33rd in this race last year and 35th in the spring, but he led 5 laps in spring. He got caught up in a wreck. And he, like you said, 2 top 5s in the other 2 starts. So he's been good. They seem improved this year. If you're going to go down the Ford trend, you might as well go with him at 20-1. And Cindric, he hasn't had the best results on super speedways this year, 23rd, 11th, and 26th. So that scares me a little bit. But he did win Daytona last year. He was good on these tracks overall last year. And let's face it, he needs a win. I think that's his path. I don't think he's going to points his way in with as bad as his finishes have been. He's going to have to win. Why wait till Daytona to be sweating this out when we saw what his teammates did?
He probably has the better chance of those road course races before Daytona.
Yeah, and even those, he's not done stellar. He hasn't still looked.
Last week was really the only time. Hey, Austin Cindric, where'd that come from? In a long time. So
yes, this would be a good track from him. So 20-1. That's why I went his direction too.
And by the way, I should note this, and maybe we'll talk more about this on Discord. But speaking of our fantasy team, how about those standings?
Oh, tightened up. I mean, tied.
You can't get more tightened up.
You really can't. It is really tightened up to. We don't need a playoffs. We just watch our standings. We got them all. It all worked out.
Eric and I have the same points now. We're equal, and CJ's 5 points back. And that's kind of hard to do. So that is going to make for some interesting. I mean, we may never see that again. That's just at this point in the season. So that's crazy.
Parity has really been key. Putting this thing back.
You can check out. We'll have a link in the description if you want to check out our standings. All right, Gibbs 22-1. And CJ, as usual, he's on his fantasy team, the only one to take Gibbs this week. Finished 9th earlier this year. He was 9th last week, the first time he had a top 10 since the dirt race. But besides the 9th, didn't really do much, even though he was in the running at Talladega because he ran out of gas, right? That was the deal. He ran out of gas at Talladega.
Yep.
But again, for me, there's other long shots I like better than a rookie. And then Truex, by the way, is 25-1. Just to mention him as well, but Truex is sort of like Larson, and we've talked about that too. Even though it seems like he's a little bit better on the super speedways lately, but again, expecting him to win, this would not be the week. The only thing is, just like Larson, at least you're getting 25-1.
Yeah, Truex, exact same. Super speedways, I avoid him. I mean, he's just terrible there. I think he's only got like 4 top 5s and 4 or 5, something like 70 plus starts. And in the past, we've always mentioned, hey, Truex is a great 1.5-mile intermediate. I mean, he was the best for years on these 1.5-mile tracks. He's 0 for 27 in Atlanta. He's never won there before, so I don't think he's going to win on a super speedway.
Bad combo.
So I avoided him there. Gibbs, yes, this will only be his fourth start. He won an Xfinity race there in the spring of 2022. That was the only lap he led. He led one lap, so it's not like
one of those
he was
deals.
good there.
Okay.
Yeah, he was on the pole in this race weekend last year. He finished 35th. So, and then 9th in the spring. I don't think he's going to jump out with a bunch of speed. Again, it's the Toyota factor there too, right? I just don't trust that they're going to necessarily jump out, and that's a lot of laps led that Ford is led on these tracks. So then to jump ahead of them, I think that's asking for a lot. I feel like Toyota's gotten a lot better on road courses naturally.
Sure, yeah.
Not so good on super speedways.
And look, Toyota, as we were saying, Christopher Bell was the best driver. Toyota, they seem to have something going on all of a sudden. And it's usually just one driver, though. But they've got something going on the road courses this year.
It does. Super speedways, they don't. Yeah, and I think they're okay with that because super speedways aren't going to win your championship.
Also at 25-1, Reddick, Stenhouse, and Wallace. You did not take Wallace. I was surprised by that. Reddick, 5th earlier this year. Crashed both races last year. Hasn't shown much besides the 5th at Daytona or Talladega. And in his last 4 races, his best finish is 28th. So that's not good. Stenhouse, we know how he can drive in these races. So it's super speedways. So he can always be dangerous. Winner of the 500 this year. Also has not had a top 5 since dirt. So he's not going through a good run and hasn't looked good at Atlanta so far overall, but a dangerous driver at this track. But Wallace I went with. I know he hasn't shown much at Atlanta. I get that results-wise or even this year, but he did lead 35 laps at Talladega. I know it's in him, sort of like Stenhouse. So I think both drivers are good long shots. If you want to take them both, take them both. I got no problem with that. But I just decided, with a few long shots, Wallace would be one of them.
Wallace scared me. I feel like he used to always be where Larson and Truex are my nope, not even touching them this week. I don't care if they're 100-1, I'm not touching them. Wallace was always, I don't care if he's 5-1, I'm always taking him. But I feel like now I'm chasing. And then when you're gambling, you don't want to chase your money. And I looked at this year, 20th, 27th, and 28th are his 3 super speedway finishes. And then I look at Atlanta and realize his best finish is 13th. He's not even had a top 10 at Atlanta. And even if you look at his finishes on the super speedway, 13th, 14th, 27th, he's just not – this isn't one of his better tracks. Where Daytona and Talladega, he's always a threat there. So I thought if I took him, I'd be chasing him. And Reddick's just been downright terrible on these tracks. 39th in Daytona, 16th in Talladega. Yes, he was 5th, but I don't really equate that he was great. He crashed out both races last year. I know people like average finishing position. He was leading me. Yeah, he also crashed. He crashed. Yeah. And that's what he like. There's a reason. It's not about where you're running on lap 80. It's about where you're running on lap 260 when the thing matters. There's a reason the creams seem to rise to the top. So he crashes a lot at these races. So I again, punted on a lot of Toyota drivers.
By the way, speaking of Reddick, his futures odds because of this rut he's in has gone up to 22-1. So
now that's another one. That's a different story. That I would take. Those I keep hammering him when he keeps going out of those.
And Harvick,
he's in a rut. Yeah,
I mean Harvick went from what 16-1 to 28-1 in 1 week.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
And I always say you've got to remember. Don't look short term with this. Look at the playoff tracks and look at what they can do. Look at the round of 8. Are they good enough to get from the round of 8 to the championship 4 is what you got to look at. And then if they are, Phoenix, it doesn't matter what you've done the other 35 races. What can you do at Phoenix? Harvick, we know what he can do at Phoenix. I mean, he's the king of the desert out there. So, yeah, you want to keep putting him down there. I'm going to keep taking him too with those odds. So, and this week I took him.
He didn't get hot until late last year, Harvick.
Nope. And that's all that matters. Like, as you said, these are some weird tracks that we're in. There's not a lot you could take from these tracks. Even this one for Sunday, you're not going to be able to take much from the super speedway. So that's kind of good that they keep not finishing well on these tracks because their odds are coming way too much.
Yes.
I don't look too much into them.
And you did start to put some money now on some long shots. And that starts with the 330-1 shots. Almirola, Bowman, and Jones. I did put money on Jones, stood away from the other two. Almirola, we know he can be good on these races, so I could see why you would take him. And Bowman, though, yeah, I know he's also with 30 to 1. Maybe that's getting a little out of hand. Maybe he shouldn't be 30 to 1, but I don't like I don't like how either one of them have been racing. I mean, Almirola has one top 10 this year, no top fives. Bowman hasn't had a top 10 since his return, so that's why I stood away from those guys. But Jones 8th this year, and he does seem to be. The last couple of races aren't all that bad for Jones, so maybe he's starting to get back. Because remember, that's also we said last year Jones started getting going late in the season, so he's probably the best free agent we have right now in fantasy. So we're all maybe looking at taking him if we need to. 4th in one of the races last year, and 6th at Talladega. So yeah, I thought Jones was definitely the way to go in the 30 to 1 shots, but you took them all.
Yeah, Jones, as you said, for those stats, no brainer. Bowman, I thought a Hendrick driver still at 30 to 1. Hendrick swept both races there last year still, and I'm getting Bowman at 30 to 1. He used to, in the old Atlanta, he was still 3rd and 4th. He was 10th last spring. Granted, 32nd this race last year, 14th in the spring this year. So it's nothing to write home about, but you're also getting him at 30 to 1. I don't think Larson's got any shot of winning this week. Chase Elliott, we're kind of skeptical with. Byron, I wasn't 100% sold on. So if the Hendrick guy does win, I might as well take the guy that's 30 to 1. So that's the only reason I went his way. And Almirola, he qualified 5th in the spring race. He led 17 laps. And I know I did make fun of, he wrecked while he was leading. He wrecked while he was leading, but it wasn't because of his fault. He was pushed out of the way and wrecked. But that was at the end of the race. So he was leading at the end of the race. And I think he knows he's got to win. And remember a couple years ago, he came out of nowhere and won Loudon. So he's capable of doing it.
Sure.
Super speedways, I think we've all admitted, these are his better tracks.
Yep.
So for those odds, Ford again on this type of track, his numbers are better to win this. So I thought 30 to 1, why not? Not out much if he loses, but if he wins, it's a nice little payday.
And then at 35 to 1, you went with all three of them. I went with Harvick and LaJoy, and we're always going to go with LaJoy.
Have to. Yep.
Yeah, especially at Atlanta, because he's got 2 top 5s in 3 races since the transition. And Harvick, for me, it's all about 35 to 1. I mean, 35 to 1. Okay, I know he's not going all that well. He only has 1 top 5 in his last 11. But come on, this is still Kevin Harvick, and he knows how to race at super speedways. It's just a no-brainer. And you went with Suarez, as you mentioned. He was really good at last year, like Chastain. Not so good. I don't know if he got into trouble earlier this year, which is why he finished way back. But he has been actually better than Chastain on the super speedways this year. He does have a couple of top 10s.
Yeah, he's got 2 top 6s in his 3 Atlanta starts, finishes wise. So it's like 35 to 1. Again, I was playing the numbers of if Trackhouse does do the hat trick and go the three-peat here in as many races since NBC took over, it would be with 3 different drivers. He fits the mold. So I do like him. Harvick was a no-brainer. Granted, his stats have been more to be desired on super speedways this year, but it's not like he's 14 to 1 and you're chasing that. He's 35 to 1. And I think there's some sentimental value this weekend because the site of his first Cup win was Atlanta.
Okay.
In 2001. 3 races after Dale Earnhardt passed away. He's in that car, that white and
Nobody
red.
cared.
Yep. He's running that paint scheme this weekend.
Yeah.
And also, this is his final Atlanta start. So it'd be fitting if he wins his first ever Cup race in Atlanta and his last ever Cup race that he will run in Atlanta, he wins it too. Can he bookend it both with wins? He knows how to race super speedways. That's why I'm not too concerned about his finishes. And he's 35 to 1.
Yeah.
So yeah, no brainer. That's why I went with all those guys there.
And then that was it for you. For me, I did put a few bucks on McDowell at 40 to 1 and Haley at 50 to 1. AJ, look, he for me, he ruined his chance by not competing at all in Chicago. That he needed to do it. Dylan, you already mentioned he hasn't done well at all at super speedways. But McDowell, I know he hasn't done well this year. I get it. But the fact is, we know he could drive on super speedways, winning the 521. And he's got 3 top 10s in his last 4 races, so he's in a nice little run at this point. So I thought 40-1, I'm going to do it. And as far as Haley, and I got to say this with Haley, who won the Daytona race, not the 500, in 2019. He had a couple of decent finishes here last year. I have to mention this, but knowing how badly he needed to win last week, knowing that the driver that was competing with him for the lead is not a NASCAR Cup driver, I don't know whether or not I would have been fine if I'm in Justin Haley's camp, if Justin Haley would have just knocked him away.
I'm shocked he didn't. In this format, we know other drivers probably would have. In that standpoint, there's several. I know he said, "Hey, I could have used that top 5. We're in contract talks, and the runner-up was good." It's like a win would have been better. I think he would have got. Yes, people have said that's disrespectful. I get it, but people also have been like, "Hey, if I'm in front of him in a late race, you're in their heads too." We know Ross Chastain would have done it.
Yeah, right.
Chase Elliott would have done it.
Yeah. Kyle Larson would have done it. Kyle Busch would have done it.
Yeah, so at some point, that's what NASCAR's evolved to. I think you had to do it. I think it'd be hard to look at your team in the eye and say, hey, because I've done everything possible. You did what you didn't. You could have taken him out. You could have. And honestly, you probably should have, because you're not going to get many opportunities in that again.
Because when he came back and took the lead, that was when he should have done it. He shouldn't have, because it's almost like he actually thought in his head that I can win this race. Hey, look, I'm getting the lead again. No, don't worry about it. You got him again where you want him. Now wreck him, get him out of the way, and now you've got the lead. Really, for the way you want it. But then once he started getting passed again, he was actually out of position to do anything, because he had gotten loose. So he couldn't even do anything. He ruined his opportunity, and then he could never get close to him again.
Yeah, because at the end of the race, SVG, we'll call him for short so we pronounce his name right. He had a really good car. He was a top 5 driver.
Better than Haley.
Take him out of him. Get rid of him. Put him in a tire barrier. Don't have to end his day, but run him wide, push him in. That's what NASCAR would have wanted. Hey, that's a highlight reel. Let's get these guys fighting with each other or whatever.
Yeah.
Plus, I think his quotes were interesting when he made mention in a polite way of saying, I choked. I haven't been in this position very often. I'm not used to running up front at the end of the race. No, you basically choked is what you're saying. I'm not used. You're a race car driver in the premier series of NASCAR. You were in a position to win, and you flat out didn't do it. You choked. That's basically what he's saying. You can't say I'm not used to being in that position. That is translation for I choked.
And we all know he did not have a better car. So it was all about, you either take this guy out or you don't and you lose. That's it. There was no other option. You weren't going to outspeed this guy for the last 5 laps or however long it was. It wasn't going to happen.
No. That never was going to happen. No, he had a shot and he blew it. And we'll see if it comes back around this week and super speedways are his better tracks. But I don't know. It's hard to bounce back from that.
And then really, there isn't anybody else besides Haley or McDowell that I was really interested in, because forget Briscoe. No. He's in such a bad rut at this point. Maybe Ryan Preece, but he's done nothing for CJ all year. I'm still surprised he's hanging on to him, but maybe he'll steal a win somewhere like this. And I didn't see anybody else.
No, there really isn't, because at the end of the day, these super speedway races are still typically won by the big name guys. They always find their way. I mean, you look at Atlanta. We'll just focus on that one. William Byron with Hendrick, Chase Elliott with Hendrick, Joey Logano with Penske. Those are the 3 winners on this package. It's just hard to fathom that a really long shot's going to naturally come out and win on Sunday when track position will definitely be a thing.
Now, we're going to remind everybody that check out Discord. It's going to be the best way for you to follow Sunday night, and when we are hopefully going to be able to stream live. And look, if we can't do an hour, we'll do 45 or we'll do 30. We're going to try to get in an hour if we can. But you know, if we get in a shorter period of time, then that's the case. Hey, you know what? Hopefully, maybe we'll get lucky and there'll be a delay at the race, and then it'll be the later it goes, the better for our opportunity to do a live 1 hour show.
And there's a chance of rain in the forecast, so we'll see.
So hopefully that's the case. But either way, follow us there on Discord, and as we said, that's definitely the place from now on for these types of updates and things of that nature. We still welcome the comments, of course, on YouTube because that always helps us, including not only subscribing naturally to the videos, but hitting that like button is extremely important to the growth of our channel. And that's going to wrap it up. So, Eric, no IndyCar report this week, correct?
Not till next week. Yep, they're off this week.
All right. So we'll talk next week. What do we got next week? New Hampshire.
New Hampshire and IndyCar in Toronto. So 2 next week.
Okay. Excellent. We'll do that next week. And by the way, Friday, CJ will be on for a F1 report, which is tomorrow. It's just so weird. It's a weird week. It doesn't feel like...
This week has thrown me off. Yeah. With Tuesday being a holiday.
Still feels like it's Tuesday because we're doing the show too. So yeah, it's actually already. So tomorrow, check that out. And Eric, we'll talk to you again hopefully next Tuesday.
Yep. Sounds good.